Romney is about to go to Israel, but he doesn't want to criticize President Obama in a foreign country. We've got this funny rule in the U.S. where that's apparently verboten, although Republicans often violate it. But
and it's a stupid rule.
And it's a dumb rule.
Right.
But anyway, so he does this interview in Nevada before he goes on the trip with an Israeli newspaper.
And one of the places he's going is Israel.
Yes, the paper is run by, of course, right-winger Sheldon Adelson, who's already given Mitt Romney a tremendous amount of money.
So the paper is Israel Hayom. So before we get into the nonsense foreign policy stuff that Romney said, like just to give you an idea of Sheldon's paper. Mm-hmm. Okay, here are a couple things that they said about Mitt Romney in this long piece, in this interview that they did with him in Reno. It says here, this is just the paper setting up the interview. It says, the U.S. is currently consumed with its upcoming presidential elections. Americans must choose between Obama, whose approach and achievements are contentious, and Romney, who is considered a gifted businessman.
Well, I like that they're fair and balanced.
Totally
that puts Fox News to shame.
Totally, yeah. Then later, we'll take graphic 2 here. They're just talking about it. They go, Romney's a soft-spoken man. Up close, he looks like a movie star. Tall, graying at the temples and tan. He definitely has the presidential look.
Okay, now, there's nothing wrong with that in terms of, like, it's roughly true, etc. When you frame it next to their descriptions of Obama, etc., it becomes comical, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that might be subtle, I don't know if they intended it or not, is he has the right look for a president, whereas President Obama does not have the right look, if you know what I mean.
No, in the context, again, and it's not like if the New York Times were doing a profile of him, that some of these same ideas would, but they would have nuanced that far more creatively.
No, this is over the top.
Yeah, so anyway, here's what he said, though, because he is talking to these guys, and of course, one of the questions asked was, what's your reaction to the Arab Spring? Which has not gone exactly as America would have hoped democracy goes, which is to be our big problem with democracy. We're in favor of it until it actually happens.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we go, wait a minute, we didn't want you to vote for those guys.
Right.
We want you to have a democracy where you vote for the guys that Americans want.
Right. That's the big objection. So here's what he says. This is graphic 3. We'll begin with. President Bush urged Hosni Mubarak to move toward a more democratic posture, but President Obama abandoned the freedom agenda.
Wait a minute, that makes no sense. But Mubarak was against the freedom agenda. He was a dictator.
Yes.
So if we had gone with Bush's support of Mubarak, we would have had the freedom agenda by the Egyptians not being free.
Yeah, they weirdly, they didn't seem to press him on this.
About the logical inconsistency of that answer.
That the Arab Spring has resulted in freedom and democracy, and therefore Obama didn't support it. And of course, at the time, remember, Republicans were very quick in the beginning of the Arab Spring, and in Egypt too, to say what was the cause of the Arab Spring. Bush
and the Iraq War.
Right.
So he started this freedom agenda, and look at it's blossoming and flowering all over the Middle East. Now, Muslim Brotherhood wins in Egypt, etc., and all of a sudden they're like, oh, Israel doesn't, and Sheldon Adelson doesn't particularly, and the right wing particularly, do not like those governments. So they're like, did we say freedom agenda?
So
no, we don't want that. We don't want that. But they have to still pretend to be in favor of freedom. That's why we have this massive logical inconsistency, because he has to say he's for freedom while being against freedom.
So the follow-up question would be, so if Barack Obama had continued Bush's freedom agenda, which was nothing, right? If Barack Obama had continued Bush's freedom agenda, would Hosni Mubarak still be in power? And would he have self-imposed all these democratic changes leading to an election? And I would love it if Romney said yes.
Because nobody in their right mind could possibly believe that Mubarak was going to lead to democracy. He had about 40 years to give it a shot.
Had a lot of time, ample time.
And he didn't really head in that direction.
30, to be fair.
To be fair.
Only 30.
Right. Gaddafi had a longer period of time. He had 42 years, didn't get there. Mubarak was trying to reach Gaddafi's record. It didn't look like he was headed very much in that direction.
So here's what he obviously says going on graphic 4. Clearly, Romney told the paper, we're disappointed seeing Tunisia and Morocco elect Islamist governments. We're very concerned in seeing the new leader in Egypt as an Islamist leader. Continuing on to graphic 5, it's our hope to move these nations toward a more modern view of the world, not present a threat to their neighbors and to the other nations of the world.
So then we get to the substance of this, which is Mitt Romney, if he's president of the U.S., they're not going to do anything to support democratic movements throughout the Middle East. And you have to think, that has significant consequences, not just for the governments that already exist, new governments in Egypt, Tunisia, et cetera, but also in Syria, where basically the first question he's going to ask about what should America do in that situation is he's going to go to his benefactor, Sheldon Adelson, who's a massive right-winger, not just here in the United States, but also in Israeli politics. And he's going to say, what would you like me to do about Syria? And so if Sheldon Adelson says, hey, you know what? I don't like the democratic movement in Syria because we had a guy in Assad that we fairly easily controlled and had some sort of partnership with, but we don't know if we can control an actual democracy in Syria. So let's work against democracy in Syria. Will Romney sign on for that? Almost indisputably.